Tata Group was among the multiple entities that had put an initial expression of interest in December 2020 for buying out the Maharaja. SpiceJet founder Ajay Singh was also among the bidders. Now, for Tata Sons, the recommendation would mean it's coming back to an asset it started almost 90 years ago. Now remember, Air India has been in losses ever since its merger with domestic operator Indian Airlines in 2007. Now we will be discussing the story in detail with our panel of guests. Joining us today is Sharat Kohli, he's a senior economist. Also joining us is Yogendra Kapoor, another senior economist. We also have with us Mr. Sanjay Srivastav, he's an economist as well. Also with us on the broadcast, Wing Commander Praful Bakshi, an aviation expert.
The black sheep.
Does this finally mean that Air India's fate is all set to change?
Are you asking?
Sharat Kohli, please unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Mr. Kohli, over to you.
Yes, no. I mean, see, it's a very strategic decision by Tata's. And let me tell you something interesting. When Tata's had first bid for Air India, there was no pandemic, there was no corona. So the bid is as old as that. Then came corona. And you know, the last year's financial losses of Air India have mounted from 5,000 annual to 10,000 crores annual. So that is the first thing which Tata's will have to deal with. Second important thing is 70,000 crores of accumulated losses. Third important thing is about 60,000 crore of debt. Out of that, 22,000 crores has been given to an SPV, a special purpose vehicle. If we leave that out, it is still 38 to 40,000 crores. Problem number 4, of aging fleet. Some of the aircrafts are state of the art, they are quite big, but most of the fleet is aging. Problem number 5, an aging team. I mean, there have been people who've been with Air India for 35 years, 30 years. Every time you travel Air India, you meet a very mature, let me not offer any negative comment, I don't want to sound negative, but there is a very mature team which deals with you. Now, problem number 6, that is, you know, the kind of service which Air India has been giving to the customers has been a question mark, which is the reason for losses, you know, whether it is delayed flights, whether it is cancelled flights, whether it is in-flight service, whatever be the case. Now, these, as per me, are the 6 major problems. Now, here is the advantage to Tata's. Advantage number 1, some very state-of-the-art aircrafts. Advantage number 2, that is, it gets some preferential landings and benefit of strategic alliance.
All right, let's come back to advantages in a bit. Now, okay. Mr. Srivastav, Mr. Sharat Kohli has of course listed out various problems that now Tata's could face, or whoever the winning bidder is could face. But how about we talk about the 2 big challenges? One is, how will they handle the so many losses? Will the losses be written off? And also the question of employees, what happens to them next? Because that's one major challenge of PSUs, is how do you handle the employees and what do you do with them? So let's go on to losses and then discuss what happens with the workforce of Air India.
Sure. Thanks, Gauri and NewsX team for having me. And I think if anyone, it is the Tata Group which is really best placed to handle both of these things. And this is almost like a circle of life. 88 years back, Tata started. 68 years back, it got privatized, and now it's there. And the proof of the pudding lies that have you actually done it? And I'll just give an example. Way back in 2002, Tata's actually took over that time the biggest disinvestment in the form of BSNL. And I was personally part of the team which did it. And it handled these 2 things very well, because it has the wherewithal to do the right structuring at the right cost and has the long-term financial muscle to handle the losses and structuring. And I think also the terms of the bid contains that there will be a enterprise valuation on which it is being bidded, and not just taking the complete thing. So I think there would be some partial relief depending on the structure. Second most important thing you talked of was of employees. Yes, they will be required a mindset. Again, I give an example. The same condition was there in BSNL, that for the first 12 months, there wouldn't be any retrenchment on VRS. Mr. Tata, being his magnanimous self, himself had actually offered that for that instead of 12 months, which was minimum required, he had put it for 24
So are we
months.
expecting some sort of a golden handshake agreement for a lot of its employees, or do we expect them to absorb all the employees?
So what will happen is twofold. I think in the first thing, Air India is a running entity. So it's almost trying to fix a flying aeroplane. First, it will be integrated, and anyway, there is a condition for 12 months for no retrenchment. So there will be a alignment. There are also synergies with the two airlines, both Vistara and Air Asia, and once they take over, then the right capability mix will be seen, and then possibly if there is a restructuring or a VRS plan, that will come out. But I am very sure if 12 months is what is the commitment required for the bid, Tatas would have definitely given a more generous leeway, because their outlook will be more strategic and more long term.
All right, Mr. Yogendra Kapoor, then there are of course challenges, but how are the Tatas better placed to tackle with them? Because one thing is of course the sentimental value that Ratan Tata had in terms of buying out Air India back, but what are the kinds of advantages that Tatas have now in dealing with these challenges?
See, first of all, we need to understand that Tatas have a reputation which is decade old of transparency, efficiency, and of managing large-scale operations. So this is one important point which makes them fully, I would say, fit to handle this kind of an operation. Now, if we look at whether it is really going to create great value for the airline which is going to get takeover, yes. The fact is that Air India, if we see, although it's a fact that they had a sliding market share, but at the end of the day, they still control a large majority share in Indian market. The point is that once an efficient owner comes in place, it has its own effect of managing the operations as well as the market share, which will go up. I also see that this government has made up its decision very well, that they want to, deal only with assets which are of national importance and national security, and they want to completely divest themselves of businesses which they feel can be more efficiently run. So I think it's a step in the right direction, and at the end of the day, it will also create revenues which are much needed for the government also, as we find that this decision is already delayed on account of COVID.
Right. Vinkamara Bakshi, then, how historic is this then? Because the Modi government would have delivered. This is the question that has been going on for years and years now. At least in my lifetime, I've heard that Air India is about to be disinvested, it's going to be privatized. If this finally happens, how historic is it?
It will be a milestone in the Indian aviation. Why I say that? We have known J.R.D. Tata, not my family, but J.R.D. Tata held the honorary rank of Air Force, and we had invited in Air Force, when I was a young officer, he had come. He was describing the running of Air India at that time. At that time when the Air India was taken over the government, and he was describing it, and he says, I'm sorry, there's the only way where the organization should not be run. He says the airline is run with a non-professional, people who do not know about aviation. When they step in and handle it is like a person running a surgical ward without any knowledge of surgery. That is what it is, what you said. And all the ace economists are sitting out here, they will bear me out that until and unless you have proper management by objective and also proper chain of command and control, and you have a leadership, proper leadership, who understands the objective and takes the whole team alongside. I'm not going to lecture on management here, but let me tell you one thing. That is what Mr. Tata has said, that how the airline should not be run is being run. And that is what the problem is. They were wanting to give jobs and posts to everybody, free travel. And the way it was mismanagement, you will understand, it was running in debt after debt. And he was very, very, annoyed and worried about the replacement of the aircraft, maintenance procedures. He said they are all going down. And that is what, this was even mentioned by Rusi Modi, mentioned by a lot of number of people. But unfortunately, Tata Group, Tata family had fallen afoul of the leading families of the political family of that time. They had to pay the price for that.
Right.
But whatever, it's good that things are getting over, the things are showing promise. Let's hope that Tata now comes back. Let's hope that this present government makes it a point. Believe you me, when Kashmir Princess crashed in 1953 due to explosion in China Sea, that time Tata personally cried. He said, I wish I was looking out of the security. I wouldn't have let it happen. You must understand the whole incident, how it took place. So this is how an airline has to be run. Then only we will understand. It is pure professional job, and you cannot have people who do not know about the job in the team.
Right. Sharad Kohli, if this disinvestment then goes through, which it's more likely work culture of Air India, because already we've seen that one thing is that business doing business, which is of course out of the question now. But how do you change the work culture? How do you ensure the top management now gets into a mode which is corporate, it's privatized, and it's efficient in terms of doing business now? Sharad Kohli.
See, at the end of the day, Gauri, the government is because it knows that if a professional management takes over this company, things are going to be better, because I think it was after all about the efficiency of operations. It was after all about the way the whole company is being run. And the government was convinced that it will disinvest and hand it over to a private career. See, what Prime Minister said, I support that. You know, government has got no business to be in business. I think this fact is proved by Air India. If you look at the accumulated losses and the debts, it's a classic case of mismanagement. Year after year, government had to inject funds to keep it afloat. Now, I think a very strategic point which comes to Tata's here, there is a budget airline which Air India has. It's called Air India Express. So right now, Tata and Singapore Airlines, which operates Vistara, is not into budget airlines. I think that is also on Tata's mind, because in the times of pandemic, low-cost travel has got a very high significance. So I think Air India Express coming by default would be a big strategic move which will put Tata's in competition with SpiceJet and some of the other low-cost carriers, as they say, LCC. So I think Tata's have a tough task ahead. It's a bouquet which is mixed. There are some very big plus points coming. There are some very big assets, very strategic alliances which is coming in its kitty. On the other side, the golden handshake, which, as you said, the work culture can only improve if you bring in young blood into the airline. I think it is, after all, about the kind of people which Air India has. I'm not in criticism of the Air India staff. They have been very faithful. They have done their bit for the last 30-35 years, even while after Indian Airlines, it has been in losses. But I think the work culture needs to change. It is, at the end of the day, as you rightly pointed out, about the work culture itself would be that it is coming to Tata's bag at the time when the whole aviation industry is going through one of the most difficult times across the world. I think that is what is going to be a big challenge before Tata's. So as compared to BSNL or as compared to any other takeover, this is going to be a very, very tough call, because to bring it back into profits, I think Tata's reputation. I think another thing which Tata's is getting is the brand value of Air India. One more aspect, Gauri, which I wanted to point out, I think the propriety of Air India to some extent government would like to keep, because at the end of the day, even the Prime Minister travels by Air India One. What is it going to do with that? Is that VVIP travel also going to go to Tata's, or will government...
Some audio connection and video connection issues with Sharad Kohli. I'll come back to you.
Like US has got, the Air Force One will...
All right, Shahid Kohli, I'll come back to you. We're facing some video connection issues with you. Yogendra Kapoor, Air India is an already running airlines. It has a lot of profitable routes, so to speak. It has a very good airline fleet. It has a lot of domestic networks as well. What will work for Tatas now? The Tatas now, there are lots of disadvantages, but there are lots of silver linings as well.
What I'd say is that service industry, it thrives on its strength of competitiveness as well as efficiency. Tatas have already proven to the world that in terms of service, you cannot find a better match than when their own organization like TCS, it has created an ability as well as a market share, by which it can challenge any company in the world. So the point is that is the strength of Tata. And here I feel that, you see, the private enterprise, it runs on its own, benchmarks of efficiency and the scale of operation. So the point is, Tatas are very well placed, I feel, in terms of, not only expanding the base in terms of within the domestic sector, but at an international level as well.
Sanjay Srivastav, if you were to decide for Tatas, let's say it's a hypothetical question, but if you were on the deciding chair at this point, what would your priorities be now for Air India, as per you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. So as per me, there are top three things which has to be done. Number one, you have to stabilize this complex ship which you have taken over in flight. So you have to stabilize the operations, ensure very quickly get hold of the critical factors, and ensure that business as usual takes off while we ensure that we leverage the reopening and the other parameters which are doing. So first and foremost, ensure business as usual stabilization. Second, a very quick look, as everyone has been talking about, on what has to be done. Are there any low-hanging fruits in terms of financials or efficiencies which have to be brought in? And then the third thing, to look at the synergies both at a cross Tata group level and as well as specifically in the airline verticals. So these three things, if Tata work, and I'm sure they are going to work.
All right, Praful Bakshi wants to come in, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Well, if we had a say into this, I'm quite certain the first number point will be Tata will look into the safety, the flight safety aspect, and win the confidence. What Air India had won the confidence of the world at one time. It was called the safest airline and then most efficient airline. Safety, operations and management. That will be the number two priority, which has to go hand in hand. And thereafter, then expansion. If they are doing well, the government will give them more openings. You will see that there will be sudden boost to the tourism in India if efficient running of Air India is there, and it will become an international ambassador in all countries of India. The old Maharaja symbol still stands and people still remember. Believe you me, that will be there. But safety, and this is what Tata, GRD, the senior one, always emphasized. Then that is that I'm known for that, and that will be there. So for that, he will make sure only operational people are in the operational jobs. No bureaucracy hanging around, filling in gaps, etc. Nothing of the same nature. He will stand. And I'm happy for that he will not allow it. The Tata Group will not allow such.
All right, let's spend the last few minutes talking about what this means then for disinvestment in India. Shahid Kohli, what does it mean for disinvestment in India? What do you see happening next? Which companies? All right, Sanjay Srivastav, why don't you take that?
Sure, Gauri. So I think this is a big booster with the stretched P&L this year for the national budget due to COVID and the support which the central government has been giving. PSU divestment is big. So I think it's already done the OFS for Hindustan Copper, that's gone pretty well. Next is NMDC, some of the strategic petroleum assets like BPCL, and if it continues, it can possibly even go ahead and even accelerate and ensure the target is overachieved by 21-22. So these are the top 3-4 things I see happening. And this will also give a greater boost to the complete PSU sentiment that the government is very serious and means business.
Right. Yogendra Kapoor, then if this goes through, what are the lessons from this particular disinvestment? What has the government done right this time if this should this deal go through?
Well, first and the most important thing that I would say that the government has done it, that they have shown the intent that they are here to ensure that transparency as well as efficiency in all kinds of activities, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is service sector, they are right there, and they should not be in the business of business, which they know they will not be able to manage. So I think it is the first of its kind, which will open up the process of disinvestment for the government, and we will see more of private players coming into foray to catch the market, and I'm sure that it will only end up in creating not only revenues for the government, but it will help in the fiscal discipline as well.
All right, Professor Bakshi, if I could pose the same question to you, what has the government done right this time should this deal go through?
You are saying that what has the government done? Yeah,
what have they done right? What are the lessons here? Which can be possibly replicated going ahead?
Yes, there are a lot of lessons. The first thing is that once you are putting an airline like this, there has to be, it should be in conjunction with the DGCA, that the compatibility of the rules and regulations which the airline will bring in are compatible to the DGCA rules, etc. That there is no conflict between the two organizations, and that is very essential. But as I had already suggested in a number of places, that DGCA must have look into the running of the airline if you want to run it properly, which Tata will like to do, because if DGCA is running efficiently, Tata will run efficiently. And besides, Tata will opt for, not only this Tata, the group is opting for manufacturing line of the aviation sector. Both this thing will go run hand in hand, especially R&D is concerned. And there is a lot of money which will be spent on R&D, a lot of effort will be spent on R&D in overall aviation, feeder airlines, small state airlines, etc., which may come up. If Tata, the efficiency is put in out there and running of it is there, then Indian government stands a lot. And let me tell you finally, aviation, a company like this actually is a part of the overall air power of the nation. In times of emergency, these airlines play a very important role in the security of the country also, if you know how. If the airlines cooperate with the government and cooperate with the defense requirement, then there can be no problems at all. And Tata is fully aware. He was officiating Air Commodore in the Air Force, and he had attended a lot of conferences. He had spoken on this subject, and there should be no problem on this.
All right, Sanjay Srivastava wants to come in.
Yeah, so Gauri, I think the key thing is there are 2 or 3 key things. First is this definitely goes on to show that if the government system is fully focused and prioritizes on something, it can make things happen. Secondly, it is also showing that the divestment cannot just be done only for profitable ventures, but it can also be managed within a time-bound frame for a complex or a potential strategic asset, but which may still have losses. And third and foremost, the learning, it can actually very quickly accelerate the PSU divestment in some other strategic assets. It can actually give us good fiscal strength. So these are the top 2 things I see.
All right, before we wrap, Yogendra Kapoor, how important was this for the government? Because this was, of course, their first big disinvestment. How important was it for them to actually prove that they will be able to sell Air India and then other PSUs?
One thing I think I'm very clear is that by this act of the government, we will see much needed private investment into the economy, and which will ultimately help the government and the country in terms of creation of revenues, creation of employment opportunities. So henceforth, it will increase the consumption as well. So that's how I see it.
All right, Sanjay Srivastava, before we wrap, what does this mean for the economy? Same question also, of course, next to Praful Bakshi. Sanjay Srivastava first.
Sure. So I think, Gauri, it means two things for the economy. One is the combination of Tata brand along with Air India. It can be acceleration for the latent demand, and as the really kicks off, this can be a great accelerator and can add a momentum. Secondly, very importantly, that this can also actually add an overall a positive factor. And just last week, one of the Goldman Sachs commented that India is one of the countries where they have still maintained the growth rate, unlike many of our so-called larger neighbors. This can mean is that our resumption and our ability to perform can much be better. So it can also accelerate economic growth. And the third thing is it can even lead to a positive sentiment in the economic and the stock market.
Okay. Praful Bakshi, all right, sir. Praful Bakshi, quick last word before we wrap.
I said that this step which Indian government has taken, the disinvestment you're talking of, is absolutely correct, and the right person has been selected, right company has been selected, that is the Tatas. And you'll see the economic growth taking, like Mr. Srivastava just was mentioning, all overall, and as I mentioned earlier, even in tourism department, aviation, small circuit aviation, everything will develop. And most importantly, there will be a work culture will be set in. They will set in a pace for other companies. That is what Tata has always talked of. When you talk of good efficiency and management, you always talk of Tata. Tata will become the hallmark of management, and that is how the management should be done. They will also start thinking of handing over railways to Tata, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, gentlemen. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have on the broadcast. Thank you for joining us on this very important discussion.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.